Nigeria Info.
Welcome back to Borderlines, the only show that takes you beyond borders. So we went to West Africa, we went beyond Nigeria's borders. Now we are going directly to Israel, to a brother of the house, a friend of the house, and one of the most important voices, indeed one of the best analysts you can find on the Israel-Gaza issue. He's been here many times. It's an absolute honor to have with me again Dr. Ori Goldberg. You should know him by now. Ori, welcome. How are you?
I'm well, Ireti, and it's an absolute honor to be back. It's always a pleasure, and I always learn so much when we have our conversations, so I'm very happy to be here.
Look, every time I see you, every time I read your message, my heart rejoices, and my prayers, as you know, and you know why, are with you. So superbly, I have to say, I am incredibly proud of you. I am honored and inspired by your determination to continue to speak truth to power in this awful time.
The feeling is very, very mutual.
So let's get to it. October 9th, you know, there was all the hoopla, all the fanfare about a ceasefire. Indeed, I went to Sharm el-Sheikh and all of that stuff, you know. It was all President Trump was doing his whole, you know, fireworks and, you know, Madame Tussauds display of peace. And since then, Israel has violated, at least according to the Gaza ministry, the ceasefire 700 times. 700 times. Indeed, Israel has killed over 300 Gazans, two of whom we know are children who are said to have crossed those green lines, the children who were looking for food for their family. When is a ceasefire not a ceasefire?
Oh, it's certainly not a ceasefire at the moment, and I think the latest numbers have the number of children who have died throughout this period at close to 150. Two toddlers, two infants died of hypothermia yesterday because of the severe weather conditions and because Israel has been refusing to allow emergency aid to enter Gaza to establish shelters and dig drains. In many ways, it's not a ceasefire. Or perhaps in the most important ways, it's not a ceasefire. Israel pretty much gets to do whatever it wants, or at least that's certainly the way it seems. But, and I have to add a but here, this whole setup, this whole understanding of Israel's place in the Middle East and the way the West has condoned it and the way the West has allowed Israel to achieve absolute impunity needs to be taken into consideration, because when you think of the freedom of action, the freedom of massacre that Israel had before the ceasefire, then Israel's abilities to kill have certainly been curtailed. I mean, everybody who says this is not a ceasefire is absolutely right, but simultaneously, Israel is losing much of its ability to operate on the ground, and it's Israel who's on the defensive. Israel is playing a waiting game. Israel is trying to obstruct and obfuscate, because Israel knows full well that when the Gaza stabilization force enters the Gaza Strip, and it looks like it will at some point, and Israel will not have full discretion to fire at will. And again, this pains me to say, and it's a horrible thing to say. If Israel has killed 300 Palestinians over the past 300, over the past 6 or 7 weeks, Israel would have killed 3,000 Palestinians 2 months ago during that period. So it's a completely criminal, completely immoral, the way the world so flippantly allows Palestinian blood to be shed. That said, really, the roots of Israel's immoral impunity are so deep and so strong that cutting them out, that severing them, demands a great deal of effort. I'm not going to suggest even remotely that the world is fully committed to the cause of Palestinian life. It isn't. But the world now has Israel on the defensive. Israel is losing, despite appearances to the contrary.
Indeed. Now, the whole world knows, like you rightly said, the violations are endless. Prime Minister Netanyahu continues to claim that what Israel set out to do, it has achieved. As Israel achieved, which was apparently to eradicate Hamas, he claims and continues to claim that we have won the war because we are where we are now. But of course, we've seen young IDF soldiers who have been killed. And of course, over 70, some 100,000 or so Palestinians who have been killed, with thousands more under the rubble. What exactly is Prime Minister Netanyahu celebrating?
Nothing. Prime Minister Netanyahu is lying. Israel has not achieved even the goals it set for itself, unless by saying eradicating Hamas, one means the annihilation of Gaza and the wholesale slaughter of tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, which is, of course, not something Israel will confess to, because that would mean that Israel can be convicted of genocide. So Prime Minister Netanyahu lies. And official Israel lies about as frequently as it breathes, because there's no other way of understanding this analysis or these empty boasts. And this is true, by the way, across the board, not just in Gaza. Prime Minister Netanyahu and Israel set out on a host of Middle Eastern adventures. They occupied Lebanese territory, they occupied Syrian territory, they bombed in Yemen. They're being pushed out of all of these places right now. This is a lengthy process. It's a slow process. Israel is still being given real leeway to shed innocent blood. Shed blood. Innocence is not relevant here. To shed blood, to occupy land, to destroy villages. But again, I can't stress this enough. Israel is ultimately on the defensive. Israel's isolation grows daily. Israel is not seen as a partner for potential negotiations. Israel is not seen as somebody who can go it alone, despite Prime Minister Netanyahu's empty boasts. Over the last few days, we've heard in Israel that Israel is preparing for an offensive on Lebanon because the Lebanese military and the Lebanese government have not been able to stop Hezbollah from strengthening itself and expanding its efforts at growing. But that is a lie. Israel is not going to attack alone. It's not going to be able to do what it did 6 months ago, 8 months ago, a year ago. Time has passed, and even Israel's staunchest allies, and there are many of those who espouse, the racism and the hatred and fear that is at the heart of the colonialist project. But even those defenders now see Israel as a liability, because Israel has done everything in its power to detract from their interests, to harm its allies, because Israel is on the rampage to ensure that it alone decides when it can and should act, and that it will take no orders from anyone. So even its most fervent defenders, even its longest serving allies, now see Israel as a liability, not even as a potential liability. And again, this is a very slow process. Israel will kill, Israel will shed blood, Israel will destroy, Israel will do a lot of very, very bad things until we can see it reined in. But I think the direction and the momentum are quite clear. Israel is isolated more and more each day, and Israel is on the defense.
Indeed. Now, one of the things, in fact, before I even go there, let's talk, because I don't want us to run out of time. So, when President Trump came to the Knesset, he pleaded or ordered or declared that Prime Minister Netanyahu should get a pardon. Prime Minister Netanyahu from Herzog. Prime Minister Netanyahu has since then come out to ask himself on video, ask President Herzog to give him a pardon. But he also said he's not admitting to guilt to any of the crimes that he's been accused of. What is the position of the Israeli constitution or law on that, and how likely is it that, Prime Minister Netanyahu will get that pardon?
Well, this is elaborate and complicated, so I'll answer the last part of your question first. It's ultimately a political decision. It's not a legal decision. So if Herzog, who is said to be in cahoots with Netanyahu on many matters, decides to grant him a pardon, he will grant him a pardon. The reason he can do that is because Israeli law very specifically says that the president of the state of Israel has the authority to pardon felons, that is, convicted felons. Netanyahu has not yet been convicted, so technically he's not eligible for a pardon. But
Right.
there was one precedent where the president of the country pardoned Shin Bet personnel before they were even put on trial, which was in the late 1980s or in the mid 1980s when Shin Bet personnel were captured by news photographers beating Palestinians to death after they had tried to hijack a bus. So there was a very shady deal reached where the president of the state pardoned them, and they were not put on trial, but they all resigned. Netanyahu is counting on that precedent. But he not only has he not admitted to guilt, he's already said that he will not accept any kind of bargain here. He will not withdraw from political life. He will not resign. If he is granted this stay of proceedings, it's not even a pardon, he will carry on as usual. So it's now left to Herzog and to the quote unquote opposition, which doesn't really exist here, to decide whether this is something that they can do and get away with, or whether this will awaken the Israeli public, who is, at least as far as polling numbers show, very much against any kind of pardon for Netanyahu. So that's the legal situation.
So it doesn't look like he's not likely to, is it?
It is, I think, at best a 50-50 chance. Because now we're starting to get leaks that the legal professionals who are overseeing the process are not likely to approve Netanyahu's request on the terms that he suggested. So it looks like we might be headed for a confrontation. But again, remember, this whole thing might be another attempt at subterfuge by Netanyahu, because he wants to stay in power. He wants this endless negotiation with Trump. He wants the soldiers to remain in Gaza. He wants Israel to remain in a state of perennial dishevelment, right? Because Israel right now is a semi-failed state in terms of its ability to function. He wants that. That's good for him, because then he calls a snap election. He wins. He's prime minister for 4 more years.
Wow. Okay. So now, so that's the politics of Israel. The politics of the ceasefire, because we can't get away. It is possibly the most political ceasefire one has ever heard of. It's not diplomatic. It's diplomacy. It is political.
Yeah, very much so. But it also has to do with, if we can call it the Trump paradigm. Because in a way, that's what's happening between Russia and the Ukraine as well. And it's what's happening between Thailand and Cambodia. All those wars that President Trump claimed to have stopped, they seem to have reached a stage of perennial negotiations where things can escalate, but then they can be dialed back. Nobody wants a clear-cut resolution. Everybody wants everything up in the air as much as possible. And in a way, at least where Russia and the Ukraine are concerned, that serves Trump's interest. It serves him in Southeast Asia. It seems like the Israeli-Palestinian issue is going to be a little different. Trump wants some sort of clear-cut resolution here. He wants to assign blame. He wants to assign responsibility. And what we're hearing from Washington, as far as leaks are concerned, is that the United States under Trump is resolved to head into phase 2 of the ceasefire at the beginning of 2026, and that he will do whatever it takes to force both Israel and Hamas to come to the necessary agreements.
But Israel is still insisting that Hamas must de-weaponize, if you like, and Hamas is saying, no, we're not going to do that, because the moment we do that, we actually become even more, or our people, or Gaza becomes even more vulnerable. So where is that hope? I mean, let me read something to you, written by Gershon Baskin. I'm sure you know him. Gershon wrote, in the coming weeks, we will witness the beginning of the phase 2 of the, quote, end of war / ceasefire. Only one deceased hostage remains in Gaza. This in itself is amazing. I claimed back in September 2024 that Hamas was prepared to release all hostages within days in exchange for a complete end of the war. Hamas gave that to me in writing, in Arabic and in English. When I negotiated with the Hamas leadership on behalf of their hostage families. And it goes on, and I'll end it here. He says, retired General Amiram Levin worked with me to present the deal to the Israeli negotiators and the Prime Minister because he has more public credibility on security issues than I have. He was told the same thing that Israel negotiators told me. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his government were not prepared to end the war. So what is the point of this phase 2?
The point of this phase 2 is that things change with the passage of time. What was true when Gershon Baskin and retired General Levin did this is no longer as true because Trump doesn't trust Netanyahu. And if Trump gave Netanyahu his marching orders to some extent 6 months ago, he is now prepared. I understand Netanyahu is coming to Washington on the 29th of December, and they're going to meet. I expect, and again, we're hearing all sorts of things. For example, we're hearing that the United States has forced Israel to agree to fund the removal of rubble from Gaza so reconstruction can begin at Israel's cost, not have anybody else pay for it. So what is, I think, more likely than anything is that Trump is going to present Netanyahu with a reality that is, as the French say, fait accompli, already decided. And Netanyahu is not going to have a lot to say about it. And the reason is that Trump now trusts the Qataris and the Turks much more than he trusts Netanyahu. And he sees Netanyahu, again, as an element that not only obstructs a potential peaceful resolution, but also stands to obstruct deals that would be financially beneficial to Trump and his family. I think recent numbers that have been released over the last week show that Trump has made more than $2 billion during his time as president. He's not going to let Netanyahu get in the way of deals with the rich oil chieftains of the Persian Gulf. And these are the people who are now calling the shots. They're doing it slowly. It's a very cumbersome path. It's full of obstacles that are mostly strewn by Israel. But again, more and more, it becomes clear that it is Israel that is the most obstructive element in this equation. You're talking about Hamas being disarmed or decommissioned. Hamas has offered a lot of options on how to do that. Hamas has said we'd be willing to surrender our arms to a Palestinian security force, for example. So Trump has options. And as a negotiator or somebody who values his negotiating skills, Trump likes options. Trump can approach the Palestinian Authority. Trump can work with the Palestinians. Trump can work with the organization of the Islamic Council. Trump can work with a lot of people on the Arab side of the equation. As far as the Israeli side goes, he has only Netanyahu. And I can tell you, if you'll permit me to
please go ahead.
The lens for a second into Israel, that Netanyahu is holding on only by constantly increasing the dissonance, the cognitive dissonance in which Israel lives. The Israeli media is constantly either broadcasting images of great triumph and victory or praising those who say that, we shouldn't care about the Gazans because they started on October 7th, 2023. The dissonance is constantly being sharpened, so Israelis will not be able to go it alone. Israelis will not be able to do everything that Netanyahu claims that they will be able to do, that they are eager to do, because Israel is coming apart at the seams. So I would be optimistic and think that at the moment, Trump, when he's negotiating, he sees the Arab side as much more promising partners than the Israeli side, which is in itself unprecedented.
Indeed. Well, to back up what you said, Gershon went on to say, no one except me believed that Hamas would return all of the hostages. Everyone said Hamas will keep some hostages as an insurance policy. Think of all the lives that could have been saved if the war had ended in September 2024 instead of a whole year later. Let's talk about this fait accompli then. And the GSF, which is the Gaza Security Force.
Stabilization force.
Yes, stabilize. Thank you, stabilize. What is that going to be made of? Because that's part of the sticking point. Who is going to make that up? Are they going to actually speak to Palestinians, civil society, politicians, or are they just going to impose? I mean, we've heard of Indonesia, we've heard that Israel doesn't want Turkey as a part of it, and all of that stuff. Have they come to a decision as to which countries is going to make up that GSF?
Well, see, here's the thing, Ireti. A lot of countries are interested in being a part of this GSF also because there are economic opportunities there to be had, like, for example, getting in on the funds that will be invested in the reconstruction of Gaza. But no country so far wants its troops to be put in a position where they might have to fight Palestinian forces. What they're saying is we are willing to enter if the security situation is arranged between Palestinians and Israelis. And that, at least according to Israel, seems like an impassable hurdle, but that's not true. It's not. It seems that way because that's the way Israel spins it and presents it. But again, the more options Hamas presents to President Trump, the more the negotiations in Cairo with the Americans, with the Egyptians, with the Qataris are progressing, and they are progressing. Israel is not participating in them, but they are progressing. The more likely it is that ultimately Trump will tell Netanyahu that nobody but Palestinians can actually man and control the Gaza stabilization force. There's also the Gaza Peace Council that Trump intends to announce at the beginning of 2026, which appears to be the new deadline. If Trump makes this Gaza Stabilization Council, if he mans it not with Tony Blair's, and Tony Blair has apparently already been blackballed. He will not head the council.
So but Tony Blair is out.
Is out. But if they're going to be, for example, rich Egyptian businessmen who have close ties to the Palestinian Authority, if there are going to be all sorts of conduits and bypasses that will allow the Palestinian Authority to get into Gaza, despite Israel's very overt resistance to the idea, then it won't matter what Israel says. The situation will present itself. The necessities of the Gaza reconstruction will be such that Israel might raise all the objections it might want, but if there are soldiers on the ground in Gaza from Azerbaijan, from Turkey, from Indonesia, and even if there aren't, if there's only international commitment to reconstruction, if there's a plan, then Israel is already constrained. It cannot simply fire. It cannot move the yellow line that now separates the two halves of the Gaza Strip. Israel needs to get its act in order. It will need to do that. Now, I may sound wildly optimistic. Don't think that this is going to happen in a day and that Israel is simply going to stop. But the momentum, again, is very clear. Now we're at the stage where everybody says no. But even the no's are potential yeses for everyone except Israel. And the longer Israel remains recalcitrant, the longer Israel remains the true obstruction to any kind of progress, the less likely it is that the Israeli agenda will be fulfilled.
You talked of Trump trusting the Arab coalition more. Well, indeed, they've been for a long time the weakest link in terms of international response. What is there to trust in them right now? Why would Donald Trump trust them now?
Well, first of all, they butter him up personally, right? I mean, Qatar gave him his own personal jet, and there are all sorts of investment deals where the Trump family gets a hefty portion of whatever funds are being invested in the United States. So that's one thing. But the other is that what he trusts them because they don't present it this potential alliance as something that is based on binding ideology or on religious faith. They present it as a deal, and Trump understands that. And Netanyahu keeps trying to bamboozle Trump. He keeps trying to use, for example, his evangelical friends to entrap Trump. But Trump is looking at the way U.S. politics is changing right now, and he understands that the evangelicals are really not as strong as they were. He can't count on them, and he is receiving a lot of criticism at home. And Trump wants options. Again, I can't say this enough. Netanyahu doesn't present options. With Netanyahu, it's either you do whatever Israel tells you to do, or you're screwed. Trump doesn't like that. He hasn't trusted Netanyahu since he came to power. Because right after he came to power, the New York Times published a cartoon that had Netanyahu leading him on a leash. He hasn't trusted Netanyahu since. And all of these gestures that you mentioned, for example, coming to the Knesset, to the Israeli parliament, and saying, give Netanyahu a pardon, these are the gestures of a beneficent tyrant. They're not the gestures of statesmanship. This is not about strategic reality. This is about Trump throwing Netanyahu a bone. Look how strong I am. I can work this for you. Guys, this is not about commitment to Israel. It's not about blind support for Israel. There are a lot of hurdles that need to be crossed. I don't know if Trump is the man to cross them, but certainly the situation on the ground right now is that everything Israel says is suspicious for, the most basic reason being that Israel lies.
Indeed. When you will look at, part of the things that were agreed, or the factors of the ceasefire, is humanitarian aid. And we haven't seen that go up at all. The Americans, whatever Trump may think of Netanyahu, there doesn't appear to be any pressure being put on Israel to actually increase and meet up with its obligations in the same ceasefire of, increased humanitarian drugs in the same ceasefire. We also saw the invasion, if you like, the attack of the UN office just in Jerusalem, not just, this week, I think. So what's going on with that? I mean, the Palestinians are in flood. They're living in tents. Like you said earlier, some are dying. There's some 9,000 malnutrition children in hospital. We've also seen videos of foreign, medical personnel, doctors like Dr. Rosie and stuff, who are denied entry into Gaza all the time, or at least into Palestine. What is going on there? Because whatever Donald Trump may think of Netanyahu, lives are still being lost. I mean, they can have their bro romance fallout or bro get together, whatever you want to call it, but Palestinian lives are still being lost.
Very true. You're absolutely correct, Ireti. And Palestinian lives are being lost, and they're being lost due to intentional Israeli policies. Israel is doing this intentionally. It is preventing the entry of aid. It is preventing doctors from entering the Strip. It is keeping border crossings closed. There is pressure that's being, I think the Americans are more and more pressuring Israel to open, for example, a border crossing with Jordan to allow aid to enter. But it's true that Israel is, at the moment, preventing this from happening. And the reason this is happening is because Israel can still get away with a lot of things, and I can't stress this enough, because the past 2 years and 3 months or whatever, the past 2 years they haven't changed Israeli society. They've profoundly radicalized it. At the moment, there's absolutely no political benefits to be gained from supporting, for example, the suspension of aid prevention even for 3 days before a storm. Right? There's only been one Jewish politician who called for aid to enter Gaza, specifically targeted to the storm, to preparations for the storm. Other than him, this is Ofer Kassif. He's a member of parliament for a Palestinian Jewish party. Other than him, no Jewish politician talked about allowing aid to enter the Strip. Israeli society really is probably in the worst place it's ever been in terms of recognizing the humanity of Palestinians and of thinking about potential solutions, not just for the long-term future, but for the short-term future. As far as the great majority of Israeli Jews are concerned, this is Palestinians' problem. It's their fault. They should have not elected Hamas. They should have not attacked Israel on October 7th. They're a civilization of animals. They educate their children to kill, just whatever. You'll hear any kind of abomination and filth you can think of, you will hear and read on Israeli social media and in Israeli mainstream media. So that is also very much a part of it. Israel is digging in. Israel is circling the wagons. One of the things that Israel is most afraid of, and this goes directly to not allowing aid in, is allowing the global media into Gaza fully.
Mm.
Israel has managed to keep the media out so far. Israel knows that despite the fact that this has been the most documented genocide in the history of genocides,
Mm.
the images of destruction are still they still are beyond belief.
Mm.
You know that once this gets out, there will be no doubt in anyone's mind what Israel did, and the cries to convict Israel, certainly in the court of world public opinion of genocide, will be answered immediately. So Israel is trying its best to keep Gaza shut off. Okay, and that is probably the main motivation. It's not
Mm.
so much trying to kill Palestinians;
Mm.
it's trying to get away with it. And Israel still has the power to do that. It is revolting. Okay, it's nothing less than criminal.
Mm.
And again, it goes to the fact that the Israeli genocide is not just an Israeli perversion. That the Israeli genocide embodies the deeply held fantasies of a colonialist West about the brown hordes of barbarians at the gate. And there are a lot of people, not just Jews, who see Israel as the last defender of the West, kind
Mm.
of like the siege of Vienna in
Yeah.
1683,
Mm.
before the Ottomans could have taken it. That's still very much a part of the discourse. But again, as we progress, even the people who think these thoughts are becoming more and more ludicrous. You hear statements that are simply, I'm not even talking about morally reprehensible. I'm talking about completely bonkers.
Mm.
Okay, the
Mm.
whole discourse is insane.
Mm. Mm.
So, am I optimistic? Cautiously, yes. Do I think that this really is a very, very dark time for humanity? It is.
Mm.
But and this, I'll just say this: Gaza is going to be the shibboleth of our times. You know, your opinion on Gaza, where you stand on Gaza, that's going to define the world for decades to come, because it's about whether you see the world as completely dominated by the haves who push their agenda that is focused on maintaining their own supremacy or power,
Mm.
or if you see a world that is connected through human solidarity and a human duty towards other humans. It is as simple as that. And every day that goes by where this is still the situation only accentuates and heightens the gap between these two things.
Indeed. And as you said, it's interesting that they're blaming Palestinians for electing Hamas, the same people the same Israel elected Benjamin Netanyahu, who is getting young Israeli Jews in, military killed, and some of them committing suicide, and indeed, a lot of them suffering from PTSD.
Oh yeah, and they commit suicide, and as you say, and I can only attest to myself. I write daily in both
Mm.
Hebrew and English about the situation,
Mm.
and I can tell you that I've come to an impasse that I think I'll find a way to resolve. But for about 2 weeks now, I can't write in Hebrew about politics.
Wow.
The language itself is tainted. You can't use the Hebrew words. You can't. Just the very thought of a conversation where you would have to be against or pro genocide. Okay, these
Mm.
are conversations that are had in Israel on a daily basis by everyone. It's the very fact that you would use words to justify genocide, to explain why genocide is necessary, to say, what do we care about them? It's not our problem that they're going to drown in the floods that are coming with this Mediterranean storm. I can't find myself. I don't have the strength to use these words. So I'm writing about other things in Hebrew, but I am regaining my composure slowly. This is as bad as it is. Israeli
Mm.
society is living in a complete state of cognitive and moral dissonance. It has dissociated itself from the world, and it is only strengthening this tendency because Israel is fully committed. Right now, it either gets done the way Israel claims it should be done, which is very much detached from reality, or it doesn't get done at all. We've invested so much of our energies and our resources into this security doctrine that says we get to do whatever we want whenever we want.
Mm.
If we don't see it through, it will have all been for naught.
And then there's the West Bank. I mean, you have the UN reports. I'm looking at it here.
Yep.
Over 800 Israeli settler attacks on Palestinians between October 23 and May 2024. And it's gone up even higher now, up until today.
All proudly documented by the settlers, all backed and expanded and enhanced by the Israeli military. There's one point that we need to make about the West Bank.
Mm,
The West Bank, in the West Bank, it isn't the Israeli prime minister who's the sovereign. It's not the state of Israel. The
yeah.
West Bank is occupied territory. So the sovereign is the general who commands the Israeli military central command.
Mm,
And the current commander is a settler, born, raised, and bred in settler institutions. And he has institutionalized policies that former commanders shied away from. For example, the massive uprooting of olive trees. This has been the worst crop season in Palestinian history,
mm,
modern history, certainly,
mm.
because Israel, official Israel, not settlers, military bulldozers have uprooted thousands of olive trees throughout the West Bank, thereby simply cutting off the millennia old means of survival for Palestinians. The Central Command keeps more than 100,000 Palestinians laborers at home, preventing them from entering Israel and working for a living. So when we're talking about the West Bank, it's not as dramatic as Gaza, but we are talking about poverty reaching unsustainable levels.
Mm.
We're talking about hunger in
Yeah.
a lot of places. We're talking about public institutions and systems shutting down. This is all happening, and it's not happening because of settlers. It's happening because this is what the Israeli state is doing.
Let's talk briefly about, and I do know that the interesting thing about, Israeli analysts like you is that you're like, you're very careful about speaking to the Palestinian politics and everything, but let's kind of go there. Okay. One of the things that's constantly said by Israel, or at least by Benjamin Netanyahu and Smotrich and the Knesset in total, and indeed America and Europe, is that there isn't a Palestinian consensus. Now, here we are today. I've now seen, I saw an increased advocacy and campaign to get Marwan Barghouti freed. We've seen the refusal, Israel refusing to free him. Israel literally demonizing, dismissing Mahmoud Abbas, but also at the same time demonizing Hamas as we won't work with them. They're not good for the Palestinians. So what exactly does Israel want? What is happening with that Palestinian consensus? And what are they saying about it in Israel where you are?
Israel has for decades, certainly the last two, possibly three, has been very adamantly, very persistently applying a policy of divide and conquer with regard to the Palestinians.
Mm,
I mean, Israel funded Hamas precisely for that reason, because it wanted an alternative to the Palestinian Authority that it would use when the Palestinian Authority began to receive too much recognition or legitimacy. They would bring out Hamas, and Israel would talk to Hamas. But when Hamas would attack Israel, Israel would return to talk to the Palestinian Authority, thereby ensuring effectively that there would never be a Palestinian consensus. But the truth right now seems to be that there is, I guess, a Palestinian consensus of sort. Not broad, sweeping, and completely overt, but it's very clear as far as Palestinians are concerned that Hamas will be a part of the political future of Palestine.
mm-hmm.
It may rename itself, it may disarm, it may reform as a new political party, just like, for example, Sinn Féin did in Ireland
Mm-hmm.
and the African National Congress did in South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
But Hamas will be a part simply because Hamas has remained standing in Gaza despite all of Israel's efforts to achieve an opposite result. And after having said that, what's a Palestinian consensus? If you are negotiating for peace and stability, who said you needed a consensus to negotiate?
Indeed.
I mean, I'll flip this as far as Israel is concerned. There used to be a time when, I am also kind of an Iran expert. I used to consult and advise the Israeli government.
And Iran, incidentally, spoke up this week at the Doha debate, at the Doha forum. They spoke up and they called out. They called out all their Arab brothers and said, "We've paid the price for supporting Palestine. Where are the rest of you?" Go ahead.
Very true. And so, whenever I would say, Israel should strive for some kind of resolution with Iran, a lot of people would say, "Yeah, we understand where you're coming from." But there's always the risk in Iran of some crazy mullah gaining control of the big red button and pushing it and using the nuclear option, because you can never rule out an extremist takeover in Iran. So that used to be something that Israel directed at Iran. The tables have turned completely. Now the extremists are here. Now the people who can set the entire Middle East on fire are in Israel, and Israel has a nuclear option, in contrast to Iran. So if Israel says we need a Palestinian consensus, who would trust Israel? Who would listen to Israel? That's not a viable argument. Add that to the fact that Israel does not approach this debate with clean hands, because Israel is the chief guarantor of divide and conquer inside Palestinian politics, making sure that there would never be a Palestinian consensus. But again, what we're seeing now is conversations and negotiations that are simply leading Israel outside the pale. People are not talking to Israel. Palestinian authorities talking to Hamas. Hamas is talking to the Qataris. Qataris are talking to the Turks. Everybody's talking to the Americans. It's way more likely that when Trump announces whatever phase 2 is going to be at the beginning of 2026, Hamas will be much more prepared for it than Israel is, because Hamas has been a part of the process. Israel has not been a part of the process.
Right. So are you saying that Israel has been isolated rather by everybody?
Most of all by its own will. Israel has chosen not to participate. Israel has chosen to pursue independent security. It has chosen to stress that it is free to do whatever it wants, whenever it wants. That is the big prize over which Prime Minister Netanyahu led Israel to war and genocide against Gaza. So Israel can only blame itself.
Indeed. Right, I'm coming to your calls now. You've started calling 0201-277-0993, 0201-465-7190. You should have been sending a WhatsApp 0809-597-5805. Make it short, sharp, and succinct. Hello.
Hello, Sister. Good evening. How are you?
I'm very well, Titilope. How are you?
I'm fine. I have 2 questions in just 1 minute. First question. So you spoke about the International Stabilization Force. In the election at the United Nations Security Council, it was 30-0 in favor, and just China and Russia abstained. The abstinence of Russia and China, what does it say in that? Does it mean anything, reservation, or maybe static support for the for the ISF? So that's one. Number 2, isolation now. Israel is being isolated after the war. So we saw Britain, we saw Canada, more countries recognizing the Palestinian state. Now, EBU, European Broadcasting Union, musical competition, 4 or 5 countries now are going to be
the Eurovision Song Contest. Yes.
Yes, because of Israel action in Gaza. And if this peace agreement right now breaks down again, what kind of reputational damage can Israel suffer again if the world rises up against them?
Thank you very much. Yes, Antitilope, who is a regular listener, takes one of my questions straight out of my head and directs it to you, which is, yes, we're seeing, I think there's now 5 countries or so that are boycotting the Eurovision Song Contest because of Israel, because Israel is allowed. And he asked a very interesting question, actually. China and Russia abstained during the UN resolution on the GSF. What does that abstinence mean? Abstaining mean?
Well, Russia has its own fish to fry. And by the way, Netanyahu bragged about his constant communications with Putin regarding the situation in Syria. So Russia now, I think, has much to gain from appearing able to talk to everybody on the ground, and it's from not committing to any particular side. China, this has been Chinese policy for some time. China is afraid to show its military chops, or to enter the fray as a mediator that also takes on resolutions that have any kind of military dimension. China definitely wants to be in on Gaza's reconstruction. It sees a lot of financial opportunity there in the Middle East. But China is reticent about the Middle East. It doesn't quite know what to do there. I will say that China's relationship with Israel has significantly deteriorated over the past month, with Israel entertaining senior Taiwanese leaders, with the Israeli Taiwanese parliamentary lobby declaring a visit to Taiwan and irking Chinese ire. So China is getting ready to make a very public stand against Israel.
Okay.
It already has. I don't foresee any kind of trailblazing leadership on China's part in that respect.
Thank you. Hello.
Yeah, hello, good evening.
Good evening. 30 seconds. Go ahead very quickly.
Okay, this is Barrister Peter Oko calling.
Go ahead.
With respect to the Israeli, the situation in Israel, you see, Mr. Trump, the president of the U.S., is a transactional president. What is happening in Israel is not different from what is happening in Russia, between Russia and Ukraine. You know, yes, Russia, in as much as Mr. Trump wants to be seen as a peacemaker, he is more transactional. His family business, what his family will gain, is more important to him than the political, the politics of the situation.
Solution. Thank you very much, sir.
Yes.
Thank you.
God bless you.
God bless you too. There's a comment. Hello. Okay. Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Very quickly. 30 seconds. Go ahead.
If the Arab leaders, like the Saudis, the Emirates, and the Kuwait, have done more for Gaza and sub their parochial sentiment about the Muslim Brotherhood, if they have done more, I think this war will have ended.
Thank you. If the Arab leaders had done more, perhaps this war would have ended, is what he was saying. Hello.
Yeah, evening, FCCOG.
30 seconds, Emmanuel.
Yeah, these people have been long-time fools. I mean, the Israeli and the Palestinians. And some of us have always thought that a two-state solution will solve the problem. But I've been looking at the way they are bombing Lebanon, Syria, and their other neighbors. And this ceasefire that seems not to be a ceasefire. Even with a two-state solution, are we still going to have a solution to this Israeli aggression? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's a question. Given what Israel has been doing to all their neighbors as they are, including Lebanon, can we see a solution? Hello. Oh, I think I've lost that call. Yeah, so, Ori, let me give you a minute to that and I'll try and pick. Oh, here we go. Hold on 1 second. Hello.
Good evening, Cecilia. I'm Marco from First Act.
Okay, 30 seconds.
I'm not asking this question. I just want to make a comment. That
okay, 30 seconds.
This your guest has been one of the most balanced analysts I've ever listened to, and I want to commend him.
Oh, his name is Dr. Ori Goldberg. You can say it again, repeat it. No, you can call his name. Call his name and then say what you want to say. Ori Goldberg. Okay, thank you. There you go, Ori. You see, you're too popular. That's your problem. Far too popular.
I can't ask for better.
Indeed. Perhaps you want to address those other 2 points that were made. I mean,
About
indeed,
Lebanon?
Especially about the Arabs as well.
Yes, about the Arabs.
And then Lebanon, Emmanuel was asking, is there really, can we look at peace? Because Israel and Palestine have been foes, to use Emmanuel's words, for a long time.
Ever since the 1950s, there's been a joke in Israel that no matter which Arab country signs a peace treaty with Israel first, the second will be Lebanon.
Oh, wow.
Peace with Lebanon is fairly easy to achieve. It's about Hezbollah and it's about Lebanese leadership, but it's also about an Israeli decision. I think that Israel can reach a stable resolution with Lebanon, even if it's not a full peace treaty, very quickly if the political will is in place. And I think Israel will have to do that because Israel is certainly not in the mood and certainly not in a position to go into another war with Lebanon. Israel is not in a position to go into another war at all. Okay. So I think we can see resolutions galore should Israel be made to see reason. This will take time. but I'm fairly confident that this is where we're going. As far as Arab leaders, again, Arab leaders, I think, did not imagine.
They're just as transactional as Trump?
No, I think that they never imagined they would have the ear of a sitting American president as they do with Donald Trump. I think they never imagined Israel would be so reckless, so blunt, so overt in fulfilling its colonialist and racist fantasies. And I think the straw that broke the camel's back was Israel's attack on Doha, on Qatar. Actually firing a missile. I think that showed Trump that Israel had lost it completely.
Thank you.
And I don't think Trump knew that it was going to happen. I think Americans were alerted as it was happening. I think that ever since then, the tables have turned, and the Arabs are presenting Trump with a fairly stable agenda, and they're also telling him to pin the tail on Israel, to make Israel responsible, pay for the consequences of its actions, which I think is happening. Trump will try to prevent international trials because if Netanyahu is put on trial, so will he. But I think we're going to see all sorts of interesting developments coming over the next month or so.
So anyway, I can't answer more calls, but I can use up the time. I've only got 2 minutes left. Here's the thing: talking of who's going to pay, EU is using Russia's money to build or to fix Ukraine. Why are they not? Why has the EU? Because Israel has the biggest trade partner with the EU. There is Israeli money all over Europe, the UK, even America. Why is that money not being invested into Gaza?
Because the EU has to operate on unanimous consensus, and Israel still has allies, particularly Hungary with its illiberal Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who may, by the way, lose his upcoming election, and then we'll see what's what. So Israel is safe from that kind of asset freeze, but that's certainly something the EU will consider if the political climate changes.
Thank you so much, Ori Goldberg, our dear brother from Israel. Thank you, Ori. Have a fabulous weekend.
Thank you for having me, Ireti. It's always a pleasure.
The pleasure's ours, as you heard my listeners say. Take care, brother. All the best. Bye-bye.
Is all connected. With Turkish Airlines FlyFest, fly to Europe, to America, and to Istanbul at